Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a kind of superpower, the ability to take a just total mess of numbers and turn it into a crystal clear picture of what's really going on. It's about finding the hidden truth in the data.
So let's start with a feeling I'm sure you've had. You've done all the hard work, right? You ran your experiment, you collected all the measurements, and now you're just staring at a wall of raw data. It's a lot. It can feel pretty overwhelming. I mean, when you look at a table like this, our brains they aren't built for it. Is there a connection here? Is there some kind of pattern? Or maybe a mistake? On its own, it's just a list of numbers. The story is in there somewhere, but it is completely buried in all that chaos. And this feeling, this sense of being totally lost in the numbers, that's where we're going to start. It's the same problem that every single scientist, every analyst, every innovator faces right before they have that big breakthrough.
But, to make sense of it all, we can't just stare at the numbers harder. That doesn't work. We need a way to translate this numerical language into something our eyes and our brains are actually built to understand. And that's a picture.
And that tool, that picture, is the graph. Now, a graph isn't just about making your data look pretty for a presentation. Nope, it's a precision instrument. It's designed specifically for finding and telling the story that's hiding inside the data.
So what is a graph, really? Well, at its core, it's a visual map of a relationship. We take the thing we control, or the thing that changes on its own, we call that the independent variable, and we plot it along the horizontal x-axis. Then we take the thing we measure, the result, the dependent variable, and plot that along the vertical y-axis. And that simple setup turns these abstract numbers into a real, tangible shape.
And this is where it gets really cool. A graph gives you like 3 superpowers. First, it takes all that complex data and simplifies it into something you can understand at a glance. Second, it lets our brains do what they're amazing at, spotting patterns. Is it a straight line? Is it a curve? And third, it actually lets us calculate new, powerful information directly from the shape of the graph itself.
Okay, so let's get into it. Building a great graph, it's not just an art, it's a science. There's a really clear process to follow if you want to make sure your graph is telling an accurate and a compelling story. There are basically 6 fundamental steps. First, you define your variables for the x and y axes. Then you pick a scale. You've got to label everything clearly with units. Then you plot your points, draw what's called a best fit line, and finally, give it a title that actually describes what someone is looking at. You get these 6 things right, and suddenly, your data starts to speak.
Now, I want to pause on step 2 for a second, because choosing the scale is absolutely crucial. A bad scale can completely hide your discovery, or, even worse, it can create a totally misleading one. So how do we get this part right?
Okay, so how do you pick the right scale? Well, the key is to follow 3 basic principles. First, you have to know the range of your data. What's your highest value and what's your lowest? Second, divide your axes into equal logical steps, like counting by 5s or 10s or 50s. And finally, you have to avoid the extremes. If your scale is too spread out, it'll flatten your data into a boring line. But if it's too cramped, it'll exaggerate every tiny little bump and make it look dramatic.
All right, let's keep going. Once your graph is built correctly, the real discovery begins. Now it's time to start reading between the lines, or maybe more accurately, reading the line itself.
This is the magic moment. Seriously, you're no longer just looking at a bunch of dots on a page. You are looking at the relationship itself, in visual form. The shape of that line, whether it's straight or curved, is telling you something really profound about how your 2 variables are connected.
And one of the most powerful stories a line can tell you is its slope. The slope isn't just some random number. It actually represents the rate of change. How quickly is y changing for every single step you take in x? This single idea defines everything from how fast your car is going to economic growth to how a disease spreads.
And what's great is that it's actually really simple to calculate. All you do is pick 2 points on your best fit line. Find the vertical change between them, that's the rise, and then just divide it by the horizontal change, that's the run.
That's it. This simple formula, rise over run, is the key. It transforms the geometry of your graph back into a physical quantity that has real meaning. If you have a distance-time graph, this calculation gives you speed. If you have a financial chart, it's your rate of return. It's pure insight, and you got it directly from the picture you created.
So you've turned your data into a picture. You've pulled out a key insight from it like a rate of change. But that discovery isn't really complete until you can share it with other people, right? And that brings us to our final section, telling the story.
Your graph, that's the centerpiece of your evidence. It's the visual proof of what you're claiming. But it needs context for people to really get it. And that's where a scientific report comes in. It's the standardized way to present your findings clearly and logically.
A good report always follows a clear structure. It kind of sets the stage with the theory and your goals. It details all the materials and the steps you took so someone else could repeat your work. It shows the math, and then it presents your graph as the visual climax of the story. It makes sure that anyone can understand not just what you found, but how you found it.
So, the next time you're looking at a spreadsheet or a table of results or just any set of raw numbers, don't see chaos. See a hidden story. See an opportunity to translate that data, to visualize it, and to discover something totally new. What story are you going to find when you draw the picture?